What if I told you that the greatest power you will ever wield is not in your words, not in your actions, but in your silence? Not in your force, but in your ability to remain still. Think about it. How often do we let life's unexpected storms dictate our emotions? How many times have we been thrown off course by anger, by frustration, by fear? We live in a world of noise, constant movement, endless distractions, the demand for immediate reactions. Someone cuts you off in traffic, rage swells, a harsh word is spoken, defensiveness kicks in, a plan falls apart, panic takes hold. But here's the truth. Reacting does not put you in control. It does the opposite. It makes you a puppet to circumstance, a leaf tossed by the wind. But the wisest among us, those who command respect, who exude true strength, they do not react. They do not let the world pull them into its chaos. They observe, they pause, and then with clarity, they choose their response. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean as a storm brews. The waves thrash, the wind screams, the water churns wildly. If you jump in, you will be at the mercy of the tides, dragged wherever they choose. But if you stand firm, if you plant your feet on solid ground, rooted, unshaken, the storm will pass, and you will still be standing. This is the power of stillness, the power of presence, the power of mastering your mind, instead of letting the world master you. So the next time life throws its chaos your way, remember this: you do not have to be swept up in it. You can pause, you can breathe, you can choose, and in that moment, you reclaim your power. Now, let's explore the profound wisdom behind mastering this stillness, through lessons, through stories, and through timeless truths that have guided the strongest minds in history. Because once you learn to harness this power, nothing can shake you. The lesson of Iran, a test of patience. The morning was peaceful. Sunlight streamed through the windows of a quiet little cafe as Iran sat, sipping his coffee, enjoying the serenity of a new day. Life, in that moment, felt unhurried. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the scent of warm pastries, creating an atmosphere of simple, unassuming joy. The gentle hum of conversation, the distant clatter of cups, the rhythmic tapping of a barista frothing milk, it was all part of the symphony of morning life. But life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. A man, rushing past in a blur of motion, knocked into Aaron's table. The sudden jolt sent his coffee tumbling over, the dark liquid splashing across his crisp white shirt in an instant. The porcelain cup tumbled off the table, shattering into jagged shards on the tiled floor. Gasps rippled through the cafe. For a moment, everything seemed to pause, suspended in the thick, expectant air. All eyes turned toward him. Most people in Aaron's place would have reacted instantly. A sharp intake of breath, an angry outburst, a furrowed brow, a flash of irritation, perhaps even an indignant demand for an apology. After all, hadn't his peaceful morning just been wrecked by someone else's carelessness? Wasn't he entitled to at least a moment of frustration? But Aaron didn't react. Instead, he took a slow breath, as if allowing the moment to settle. He looked down at his soaked shirt, the deep brown stain spreading like an ink blot on pristine fabric. Then, with a calmness that seemed almost unnatural, he reached for a napkin, dabbing at the mess with measured ease. He exhaled and smiled, a genuine, unforced smile, before meeting the man's panicked gaze. "It's okay," he said, his voice steady, reassuring. "Accidents happen." The man, who had been bracing for an explosion of anger, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His shoulders, stiff with tension, slumped in relief. He fumbled for words, stammering an apology, his hands wringing together in nervous energy. The weight of guilt that had settled on his face lifted, just a little. The cafe, which had been holding its collective breath, exhaled. The moment passed. Life moved on, but something lingered. A lesson, a quiet wisdom, an unspoken understanding that not all battles are worth fighting, that not all disruptions deserve outrage. What Aaron demonstrated in that moment was not weakness. It was strength, the kind of strength that is rarely taught, yet invaluable in life. The strength to pause instead of react, the strength to choose peace over anger, the strength to see beyond the inconvenience of the present moment and understand the fleeting nature of all things. This kind of composure does not come easily. It is not the default reaction of the untrained mind. It is a skill, a discipline, an act of mindfulness cultivated over time. Imagine for a moment another version of this story, a version where Aaron slammed his hand on the table, his voice rising in frustration. "Are you kidding me?" he might have snapped. "Do you even watch where you're going?" The cafe would have remained silent, but for different reasons, watching, waiting for the situation to escalate. The man would have shrunk under the weight of Aaron's anger, mumbling a rushed, flustered apology that would do little to dissolve the tension. The morning, once light and full of ease, would have been soured by a storm of emotion that could have been avoided. And yet, isn't this how many of us live our lives? Reacting to every mishap, every slight, every inconvenience, as if it is a personal attack, as if the universe conspired against us in that moment, as if anger will somehow undo what has already happened. But anger never rewinds time. Frustration never unspills the coffee. Impatience never mends what is already broken. There is an old Buddhist parable about a traveler who carried a cup of water in his hands. Each time he encountered a stranger, he would stop to show them the water. If he was startled, if he was hurried, the water would spill over, lost to the ground. But if he was mindful, if he walked with steadiness and care, the water remained unshaken. Aaron, in that moment, was the traveler with the steady hands. He did not let the world shake him. He did not spill his peace for the sake of a fleeting inconvenience. And that is what we must strive for in our own lives. We will all have our coffee spill moments, our disruptions, our tests of patience, our opportunities to react or respond. The choice always is ours. So the next time someone cuts you off in traffic, the next time a colleague takes credit for your idea, the next time life throws an unwelcome surprise your way, take a breath. Pause. Consider, is this worth my peace? Does this moment deserve my energy? Will my reaction improve this situation, or will it simply escalate it? Most of the time, the answer is clear. Stillness is always an option. Later that day, after Aaron had left the cafe and changed into a fresh shirt, he found himself reflecting on that small yet profound moment. He had not lost his temper. He had not allowed frustration to cloud his day. Instead, he had chosen to let go. And in doing so, he had preserved his own peace. And perhaps, in some small way, given the other man a moment of grace he would not soon forget. That is the true power of patience. Not passive endurance, not suppression of emotion, but the conscious decision to respond with wisdom, to choose the path of least suffering. And so the question remains, when life tests you, when the unexpected shakes your foundation, when the world challenges your patience, will you react or will you respond? The king's wisdom, the gift of anger. There was once a great king, known far and wide for his wisdom and fairness. His reign was peaceful, his people prospered, and his reputation extended beyond the borders of his kingdom. He was not merely a ruler but a sage, a man who understood the intricacies of human nature. One day, a man stormed into his court, his face twisted with rage, his voice sharp with accusations. He hurled insults at the king, cursing his name, calling him unjust, declaring that his policies were oppressive, his leadership weak. The entire court fell silent, eyes darting nervously between the furious man and their sovereign. Surely, the king would not let this affront go unpunished. Surely, he would unleash his wrath and have the man cast into the dungeons. But the king did not move. He did not flinch. Instead, he sat calmly, his expression serene as he listened. The storm of words raged, yet he remained unshaken. The man, emboldened by the lack of retaliation, continued his tirade, expecting his words to wound, expecting his anger to spark an equal fury in the king. But something unexpected happened. When at last the man paused, panting from his outburst, the king smiled. It was not a smile of mockery, nor one of condescension, but a smile of understanding. "Tell me," the king said, his voice measured and warm, "if someone offers you a gift and you choose not to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man, still fuming, blinked in confusion. "To the one who offered it, of course." The king nodded, his eyes holding the weight of timeless wisdom. "Then if someone offers me anger and I do not accept it, to whom does it belong?" A hush fell over the court. The realization struck the man like a thunderclap. His rage, meant to provoke, had found no purchase. His insults, meant to wound, had met with nothing but tranquility. The power of his fury had been rendered meaningless, left hanging in the air like an echo in an empty hall. His shoulders sagged, his hands trembled. Shame, where once there had been rage, crept into his voice as he bowed his head. "I understand, my king. My anger is my own burden to bear." The king nodded again, his smile unwavering. "Indeed, it is always a choice, whether we accept the burdens others try to hand us. Anger, resentment, hatred, these are gifts that often come wrapped in barbed wire, but we are not obliged to take them." The lesson was clear. The man left the court that day a different person, and those who had witnessed the exchange carried the wisdom of their king in their hearts. A similar story is told of a monk who lived in a village at the base of a great mountain. He was revered for his kindness and his deep understanding of the mind. One day, a young warrior, brash and arrogant, sought to test the monk's patience. He stormed into the temple, shouting insults, hurling vile words at the monk, mocking his robes, his practice, his very existence. The villagers gathered, appalled, expecting the monk to respond, to defend himself, to at least rebuke the warrior. But the monk did not speak. He did not rise. He merely sat, watching the young man with eyes full of knowing. The warrior's voice grew hoarse, his breath ragged. When at last he paused, expecting a reaction, the monk simply asked, "If someone brings you a gift and you refuse it, to whom does it belong?" The warrior, perplexed, frowned. "To the one who offered it." The monk smiled gently. "Then why should I accept your anger? It is yours to carry, not mine." The warrior's hands trembled. He had expected resistance, expected to provoke fury, but he had been met only with peace. He had no choice but to confront his own emotions, to realize that his anger was only consuming him. He bowed his head and left, changed by a lesson he had not sought, but had deeply needed. The world will always present us with opportunities to be angry. There will always be people who seek to provoke, to wound, to test the limits of our patience. And in those moments, we have a choice. Do we take the bait, allowing ourselves to be pulled into the storm, or do we stand firm, letting the tempest pass without disturbing the peace within us? A wise teacher once said, "Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. The only person who truly suffers from unchecked rage is the one who carries it. Anger, like a flame, demands fuel. It needs our thoughts, our energy, our willingness to engage in conflict. Without that, it withers and dies. The next time someone offers you their anger, be it through an insult, an unfair accusation, or a deliberate provocation, pause, breathe, ask yourself, do I wish to accept this gift, or shall I leave it with the giver? For in that moment of choice lies true power. The king understood this, the monk understood this, and now so do you. The still lake, a mind at peace. Ayesha was once like everyone else, reactive, easily disturbed by the world around her. If someone cut her off in traffic, her entire mood would shift. If a deadline moved unexpectedly, she would be consumed by stress. If someone spoke unkindly, she would carry their words with her all day, allowing them to chip away at her peace. But one evening, as she sat by a quiet lake, something profound happened. She had come here after a particularly exhausting day, one of those days where everything seemed to go wrong. Her mind buzzed with frustration, her thoughts tangled in knots. She kicked a small rock into the water, watching the ripples expand outward, distorting the reflection of the moon above. Then she noticed something else. Beneath the surface agitation, the lake remained calm, unmoved by the chaos above. The deeper waters were still, steady, untouched by the ripples. It was as if the lake itself held a secret, a quiet wisdom hidden beneath the movement. Ayesha sat there for a long time. Mesmerized, the realization struck her like a lightning bolt. Life would always be chaotic, unpredictable, full of turbulence. But just like that lake, she had a choice. She could allow herself to be tossed around by the waves, or she could anchor herself deep within, where the stillness remained undisturbed. That night, she made a decision. She would no longer let external forces dictate her inner world. She would train herself to be like the depths of the lake, steady, unshaken, unbothered by passing storms. The next morning, she put her realization into practice. The first test came sooner than she expected. A colleague at work, known for her sharp tongue, made an offhand comment about Ayesha's recent project, downplaying her efforts. Normally, this would have sent Ayesha into a spiral of self-doubt, frustration, and defensiveness. But today, she paused. Instead of reacting instantly, she took a slow breath and reminded herself of the lake. She smiled, nodded, and calmly said, "I appreciate your feedback," before turning back to her work. She didn't let the words settle in her heart. Just as the lake did not hold on to the ripples, she let them pass without disturbance. Ayesha found herself applying this practice throughout the day. When someone cut her off in traffic, she didn't curse under her breath or carry the irritation with her. Instead, she thought, "That was unexpected, but I don't have to let it affect me." When a meeting ran late and disrupted her schedule, she adjusted without frustration, reminding herself that stillness was a choice. She had spent so many years reacting to life, letting small inconveniences turn into big emotions, letting outside chaos seep into her mind. But now she saw a new way of being. She could observe the storm without becoming part of it. She could be the depths of the lake. One afternoon, Ayesha faced a true test. She received a call from her bank. An error had been made with her account, and a large sum of money had been withdrawn by mistake. Panic surged in her chest. Old Ayesha would have immediately reacted, raising her voice, demanding answers, feeling her heart pound with anxiety. But she had been practicing, so instead, she closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and imagined herself sitting by the lake once more. Be still. Be like the depths. She opened her eyes and calmly asked the bank representative how the issue could be resolved. Without panic clouding her mind, she was able to listen carefully, understand the process, and take logical steps to fix the problem. The situation was resolved in a matter of days, without unnecessary stress or frustration. When she thought back on it later, she realized how much she had changed. That moment had proven something powerful. Stillness was not just a concept. It was a way of life, a superpower in a world of constant motion. Months passed, and Aisha continued her practice. She became known among her friends and colleagues as someone unshaken by adversity. People started coming to her for advice, asking, "How do you stay so calm all the time?" She would smile knowingly and tell them the story of the lake. "There will always be wind," she would say. "There will always be ripples on the surface. But beneath that there is a stillness you can choose to live in. You just have to remember that you don't have to chase every wave. You don't have to react to every gust of wind. You can simply be." Some understood instantly. Others took time. But everyone who heard the story walked away with something to think about. Aisha had found peace, not because life had stopped being chaotic, but because she had stopped allowing it to control her. She had learned the secret of the still lake. Calmness is not the absence of storms, but the refusal to be disturbed by them. And in that realization, she had found a freedom she had never known before. Life is a storm. It will test you, shake you, challenge you in ways you never anticipated. The winds will howl with doubt. The ground beneath you will tremble with uncertainty, and the world will press against you, demanding a reaction. But in these moments, when everything feels like it's spiraling out of control, you have a choice. Will you be swept away by the chaos, or will you stand firm, unshaken by the storm? A wise old monk once said, "If the storm is outside, why should I let it enter within me?" Think about that. The world may be full of noise, but does that mean your mind must be noisy too? A cruel word may be spoken, but does that mean you must carry its weight? A moment of misfortune may arise, but does that mean you must let it define you? True strength does not come from fighting every battle. It does not come from proving yourself through noise and force. Strength comes from knowing when to act and when to be still. A lion does not roar at every rustling leaf in the jungle. A mountain does not tremble every time the wind shifts. The strongest warrior is not the one who reacts to every slight, but the one who chooses their battles with wisdom, patience, and clarity. So the next time life throws a storm at you, pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? Does this deserve my energy? Because not everything requires a response. Not every battle is yours to fight. Sometimes the greatest power lies in silence, in restraint, in choosing not to engage with negativity. When you master the art of stillness, you master yourself. And when you master yourself, nothing, not anger, not fear, not adversity, can break you. Be like the mountain, steady and unshaken. Be like the lake, deep and undisturbed. Be like the wise king who refused to accept the gift of anger. Let the world do as it will. You remain at peace. If this message resonated with you, if you found even a moment of clarity in these words, take a moment to share it. Because somewhere out there, someone is caught in a storm they do not know how to weather. Help them find the power of stillness. And remember, wisdom is not about knowing everything. It is about knowing yourself. It is about mastering your mind so that no storm, no words, no external force can shake you from within. Subscribe to Quiet Wisdom for more timeless lessons on peace, clarity, and purpose. Because in a world full of noise, we all need a reminder that silence is sometimes the most powerful answer.